All right. Hello, ladies. I hope you're doing well on this beautiful Friday. It was like 80 degrees out.
Incredibly
Beautiful.
warm.
It was gorgeous. My name is Kim. I am the host of A Woman's Place is in the Struggle. And of course, we're joined by Kristin Jordan. And she's Kristin from Harlem. So, Kristin, do you want to make any stamps or anything since we're recording?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kristin Richardson Jordan. I often go by KRJ or Kristin for Harlem. I am on a mission to disrupt District 9, which is Central Harlem, with radical love. I have a Kristin for Harlem platform where the political agenda actually spells out Harlem. So the H is holding police accountable and abolition. The A is actually affordable housing, housing as a human right. R is redistribution of wealth and resources. L is living longer, which is about healthcare in the community and a care package for our seniors. E is education for all and environmental justice. And M is meaningful change. And so as you can see, with all 7 of those policy focus areas, I am focused on meaningful change. I also, if I win, will be the youngest in history to hold the seat. I'm 33 years old. I will also be the first out LGBTQ person to hold the seat. And I will actually be the first Black queer woman on New York City Council ever from any seat if I win the election. So thank you, Kim, for the intro space, and let's have a good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Kimberly, how did you know about the event?
I am on the newsletter, or I follow Kristin for Harlem, and I've joined on one of the Thursday calls, and so I stay abreast of what's going on. And I apologize because I'd signed up for one of the canvassing things, but there was like a thunderstorm, and I just couldn't make it out. So it just was like, maybe I'll try another time. So, very interested in changing Harlem and really representing voices that haven't been heard.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us, Kimberly. And I'm sure we'll have some other people kind of trickle in at some point. So I had a list of questions, but in light of what happened this week, there was a lot of changes that happened this week, as you know, with Breonna Taylor's verdict, and of course, RBG passed away, her passing. So I added some questions in regards to that, obviously. I know a lot of people are feeling a lot of different things this week. So the first question I had was, how can we keep RBG's legacy alive?
Oh, that's a great question. I appreciate that. Well, so I think we should start by saying what RBG's legacy is or was. And I think she didn't necessarily plan it this way, but she wound up being the fiery voice of dissent in the Supreme Court space. You know, she wound up being, for a lot of us, our voice. For those of us who are left of center, she became, in a lot of ways, the feminist voice in the room, the liberal voice in the room. I think a lot of times you would see the Supreme Court decisions and then you would see her sort of fiery dissent, the Bush-Gore election and the Supreme Court verdict, and then her talking about the decaying of our democracy. And she really held true to her values and principles and spoke truth to power. Because in a lot of ways, a lot of times she was challenged or outvoted by her fellow Supreme Court people, but she was ever vocal, and that was just awesome. Yeah. So so I think that's where I would start. What is the legacy? And I think being a powerful woman, speaking truth, and not shying away from being a dissenter, or being like the fiery dissenter, and not shying away from that. And so I think we can honor her by being vocal,
Mm.
um, in whatever ways possible, standing up for ourselves and other women.
Yeah, I agree. I learned a fact about her this week that I was surprised about, that when she was getting her law degree, her husband fell ill and she had to also take his classes on top of the classes she was already taking to help him out. So, I mean, and raising her child. So to me, that's mind blowing. It's like, wow, you're in Harvard Law, literally taking taking two loads plus a baby. Like, what? I was just blown away by that. And then the fact that, like, even after she graduated with a Harvard law degree, they wouldn't even hire her. Like, people are like, it's just so frustrating to hear that, right? But just seeing all those things and just seeing how her life was and what she represented, and it's really inspiring to women everywhere. And I was very inspired to hear um, just how she was. And I didn't know a whole lot about her, but I sure learned a little bit of a lot about her this week. So yeah, I think Kristen, you hit the nail on the head. Just make your voice heard in any facet, regardless of what people think, regardless if you're a part of the majority or not, regardless of how you will be treated after you say your piece. I think that, because sometimes I can kind of shy away from saying things. I know, like, oh, this person's gonna give me crap now, like every time they see me, you know. So instead of shying away, it's like, no, like, make your voice heard regardless of what the consequences are. And that's how she was, and that's one way I can really live out her legacy in that way. So yeah. Kimberly, did you want to add anything before we move on to that?
No, I think you both said it all. I'm radically left, so I think we've got to, get more women of color, Black women,
Absolutely.
women who have very different perspectives from the mainstream, so that those voices can be represented. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for making them younger, look different, and with radical thoughts of like community. So do more of that, and that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, definitely. And the next question is about Breonna Taylor. Of course, everyone knows about, but not everyone, but vast majority knows about the verdict, and that there weren't really charges filed. Like the police officer that got charged for shooting into another apartment. It had nothing to do with her death. It was just a mess to me, and everybody's angry, right? A lot of people are voicing their opinion about what happened. And then, this whole that settlement too was a little disturbing for me as well. So my question, or I guess comment or whatever, is what are your thoughts and feelings or frustrations about the case? And what can we do going forward to making sure that maybe this doesn't happen again, or that we really, vote in a way where this stuff doesn't happen? Or what are your thoughts, ladies?
These are good questions. I like that. I'm gonna let Kim answer this one first. I do have thoughts.
Okay. Sure. I think that I'm angry. It was just another slap in the face for Black women. And it just speaks to how, we're not seen, heard, validated, or thought of as like worthy of being, vindicated or justice in our names. And so I think it just feels like another long line of like hearing stories. And so for me, it's just another example like of how the system needs to be dismantled. I am pro-abolishment, and I've struggled with that because I think this year have most recently come into that, and so that whole needing this present law and order versus like, no, reimagine. I am in the midst of constantly being pulled back and forth and constantly being fed information to help me become a better person in thinking this through or reimagining it, because trying to like fix a broken system is really, we're not equipped to do that. You know, a lot of us are not in that system. Laws change. We don't keep up with it. You know, so I think a lot of what people are reading or interpreting is rooted in like ignorance. Like, you're not even involved with this and everyone has an opinion, which is just so bizarre to me. Like, you know, they're just kind of like going line by line items like, oh, well, this thing said this. And you're like, where's your law degree? Who are you? Like, what are you, where's your law enforcement degree? So I'm kind of over like everyone, you know, taking it and being detectives or FBI, because you're like, who are you? You know? So I think for me, I'm just really angry about like the ignorance on display and people having discussions about something they're not clearly aware of. You don't even live in Louisville, Kentucky, to understand the laws. And I'm in New York. I don't know what's going on over there. So I haven't been engaging in that way. And so I think for me, that's been for my mental health and my emotional well-being. But, you know, being online, finding those spaces where I feel validated, appreciated, Black women spaces, Black women only spaces, just because for me, that's where I feel like I need to be to deal with some of this. So, but yeah, I mean, when does it stop? And when do we get up enough courage to figure out the thing that makes it stop? Because condemning it and condoning it in like words, it's just not working. So, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, frustration is not even the word for it. It's like, after all that's happened this year, quite honestly, I'm like, I need to get out of the US. This is just like, this is getting out of control, you know, and I just feeling frustrated and overwhelmed emotionally with everything too. It's like, you know, justice has not been served, you know, or the way we feel that justice have not been served. They think it's been served. Other people have said, oh, well, she got the family got a settlement. They're good to go. Like, but that's not the point. Like,
money and property over human beings.
Yeah, like they lost somebody. Like, I don't care how much money they try to like throw at people. That's not justice, you know? So just hearing those kind of comments is like, I know what you mean, Kimberly. It's just like draining. It's like, okay, I'm tired of trying to explain myself or explain my views over and over and over again. But some people I just cut off, to be quite frank, because I just don't have the patience for it right now. But yeah, just feeling like, okay, what's next? We got to do something. We're not done here. Like, how can this be fixed? You know, I'm solutions oriented. So I'm like, okay, like this is not done. So how are we going to move forward here? You know, I know some people are just like, I'm done with this case, you know, but I'm like, okay, like we got to figure something else out. This can't be the end, you know.
Right.
I feel anyways. So Kristin, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, there are all of the thoughts, but I definitely, more than anything, it's, you know, it's a question of justice, right? This is what we're in the streets marching for justice, and constantly the refrain is, you know, no justice, no peace. I think, you know, to bring it to what Kim was saying about abolition, that to me is what justice looks like. You know, some of the demands and calls to, you know, jail the cops, etc., I am finding my own resistance to. Now, don't get me wrong, as long as we have an incarceration system, these are definitely the people who should be in it. But the bigger question I have is, you know, what are we doing to have real justice, like real true justice, as in we stop the next Breonna Taylor from happening? Because, you know, frankly, like, you know, Breonna Taylor is you know, already one in a long, long line of Black women who we have lost. And so true justice would be not what are we doing with these individual cops on this individual case, but what are we doing to prevent the next case like this? And so far, there is nothing I have seen, absolutely nothing I have seen that prevents the next case like this. There's no piece of proposed legislation. There's no actual defunding of police. There is no push for de-escalation, mental health street teams, alternatives to policing that we could funnel money into that would actually make us safer. You know, something that was brought up today. I went to is the 8th anniversary of Muhammad Ba, the Muhammad Ba case here in Harlem, and so Hawa Ba, who's one of the mothers of the movement, Muhammad Ba's mother, held a vigil to commemorate her son. And, you know, one of the things that came up that we were all speaking to is that in the safest areas of the city, we have the fewest cops, you know, and equating the safety of our community to the presence of police is such a fallacy in so many ways, you know. And I think if we're talking about Breonna Taylor, it's not so much these cops need to get fired, although the cops do need to. And it's not so much, you know, the non-indictment, although it is a shame, it is shameful to have yet another non-indictment in a case like this. But it's really like the bigger picture of like what we keep saying, like Black Lives Mattering, and how are we restructuring the world in a way that actually centers the safety of Black women. Right now, there's no safety for Black women whatsoever. Absolutely none. You know, we lay in the intersections of race and gender, and we feel the oppressions of both, and there's nothing that is yet been proposed to actually be in line with our liberation.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. I think what you just said made me really think about how the thing that upsets me is the vilification of victims of like police brutality or like execution. I use words like execution because naming it for me feels like more accurate. And to have Breonna Taylor be like, have her boyfriend, you know, we're going to take 10 years off your sentence if you say that she did this. And it's like, there's just so much like obstruction happening to go through with your insidious plan to like vilify Breonna Taylor and every other person, and how people get painted in the media and using the medium of the media to like really promote anti-Blackness and anti like woman. You know, talking about those intersections again, like they do a really good job. The system is working as it was designed to.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a follow-up question to that actually. What do you think? First of all, I know defunding police for a lot of people, because I've had these conversations with different people, is very scary to them. And I tried to break it down, and I think since this will be on my Facebook, I think it would be really cool to just kind of like iron it out. Like, hey, what is defunding the police? I want you to like really dig it in. And I tell them too, just look it up. Like defunding the police, just look it up. Like it's not like, oh, we're done, you know, like, yeah, defunding the police is on the road to abolition in a sense, right? But at the end of the day, it's like these funds are being allocated to programs. So what's the problem? But I think what I heard was, oh, well, if you defund the police, then that's less police on the street. And that means there's more crime. So I think that's how people have seen it. So what are your thoughts on that? And how can we kind of clear up that fallacy? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna echo you in saying, yeah, that's definitely how people have seen it, and I hope I hope, Kim, that you do make it out to one of our street teams. Like one time when it's not a monsoon, you can you could
That one random time that I was available, like, oh my God, what's happening?
but it is so frequently the part of my platform that we meet some resistance on, and it is so frequently the conversation we're having on the street is like, wait, but what's this abolition thing? Like, no police, like, it's a lot. But I think what we have to recognize first and foremost is that it is fairly recent history that the police have even been funded. So let's start with that. Cops are not a staple in society. They're not something we have always had. They are relatively recent in terms of human history. And the roots for police here in the United States have their roots in slave patrols and in the policing of Black bodies and in the control of Black bodies. And it has, from its inception, been about how do we contain and control these Black people.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think we need to start, because when we start from that place, then we recognize that what we're abolishing and what we're talking about abolishing is modern day lynchings and forms of modern day enslavement, and that we're actually talking about abolishing that which is most harmful and most violent to us, as opposed to the total flip side that we've been sold, which is like, oh, this is what keeps us safe. It's not what keeps us safe. If the police are a very unsafe safety net, and we need to understand that first. And then I think we need to, and this I will self-critique and also critique others in the defunding movement and abolition movement. I think we need to make sure that we're focusing first on the idea that the world we're talking about is nonviolent, that it is a nonviolent vision. Because what people think automatically is that what you're saying is remove cops and then we just have unfettered violence in the street. And
like the purge. You're like, what? No.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you just want like violence everywhere with no controls on it. So I think it's important for us on that side of defunding, that side of abolition, to say, no, what we're actually talking about is a nonviolent world, not one where we're responding to violence with violence, and not one where we have just unchecked violence, but actually a nonviolent world, and what that looks like is it builds into everything else, frankly, because what it looks like is people have housing and they have food and they have education and they have access to healthcare, and they have all the things that actually address human needs, including mental and emotional needs that actually address harm. And then we actually will see our way to a world where that enforcement is not necessary. Also important to point out, like 95% of those who are incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. Very important to point out that piece as well. So like we're actually, for all the talk about, oh, it's violent and you're gonna have unfettered violence, we need to be very clear that the majority of times we are paying police to police things that we have criminalized, like things that we have decided to criminalize, that are very often, frankly, only crime being poor, like frankly, our quality of life things. So.
Yeah, I think I was actually on a Zoom thing yesterday with, and it was called 10 Years, like the Jim Crow after 10 years and reimagining crime and the incarceration issue. And for me, when I was listening to it, I was just thinking about like how fear rules a lot of people, and how if you're in an environment where it's just deprivation everywhere, you can't see that world because you can't imagine anything other than what you have. And so you
Yeah.
can't see beyond that to say, this could be better, because it's cyclical and it's what you know. And so sometimes you get out and then you see a different thing, and then you come back and hopefully you can, you think you want to change things, which is what Kristin is doing. I love it. You came back, said, I want to run for Harlem. So thank you very much. Had to do a plug for you. But I think also it's really about helping people understand that the police won't save you. Something has to happen to you, and then the police come. They're not going to prevent anything happening to you.
That's
So
right.
they are there for the aftermath. And they might fuck you up too. Sorry to curse, but like, like a lot of people are getting, for this, going back to mental health, people are calling for mental health reasons, and we're putting law and order and authoritarian figures
Yeah.
when we need mental health providers to really come in and help people. A lot of the calls are mostly mental health related. They're not like violently related in a sense where, it's all violent calls. So I think really speaking to like, what could this look like, and reimagining with people and being really creative, and like, I'm into Afrofuturism, and just kind of like, where can we be? Like, where can we be without this thing? And involving people in the process, I think, is really a great exercise. And there's not enough spaces where that happens. A lot of like scholars and erudite people talking like very like theoretically, and that's not like going to register for the people on the street corner or like in the hood. And so really understanding where you need to meet people where they are, I think, is also important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the police are not, and I know someone brought up another point, like, well, not all police are bad. I get that. But the thing is, like, they're actually not really good at de-escalating. That's something I noticed while marching. It's like, dude, you see people yelling and screaming, like, de-escalate the situation. Stop acting crazy. Like, like, I don't get it. And then, like, there was one point where one of the police officers took out a gun and was pointing it at a 11-year-old kid. Because I don't know what happened in the scuffle of that, but it was just like, dude, we're all here to like as jail support. So what are you doing? It was really bizarre. Like they had like no control over their emotions. So I think that's like another thing. It's like, you can't even do what you're supposed to be doing. Like you can't even de-escalate. That's like the simplest thing. So I try to tell people like, okay, yeah, you can like revamp the whole system and like try to retrain the police. And I don't know if that's going to go well. I don't think that's the answer, to be honest with you. But I mean, that's a nice thought to have everybody retrained and this and that. But I don't know. I just don't think that's the answer. But anyways, just had to voice that because that was one of the concerns somebody else had. But I have another question, of course. So another question, it's kind of going another direction. So this question is civil war possible in the future for the U.S. and why? And this is based off of just how divided we are as a nation right now. And if Trump is reelected, there is a possibility. From my eyes, I can see something like this happening. Do you think it's even possible for another civil war to happen?
Yes. And I think it's been boiling and people haven't been paying attention to the numbers. After Obama became president, white supremacy groups increased exponentially. People are more emboldened. They just said something in Portland where people were planning the Boogaloo Boys or whatever groups. There's so many groups that are spinoffs. And they've been emboldened by their president. I think November 4th, no matter what happens, especially if he's not in office, you will see like a lot of violence being perpetrated against people, black, brown, whatever, black and brown. And I think that this is what they've been waiting for. Like this 2020 was what the people who have been practicing, those preppers and all those people who have been calling for the race war, who still fly the Confederate flags, the people who march up on the capitals with all their AR,
Kill.
17s.
Yeah.
This is what they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And, part of the issue is I love the song. Some of those that burn crosses are the same that work forces, because
Yep.
the same people who are allowing these people to stand next to them are like their relatives, their friends, and they're okay with it. So I think there's a lot of things happening that we're not paying attention to just because it's happening so fast and so
Yeah.
and it's so widespread. But I do believe that there's a lot of plotting and planning that people are not understanding that's happening. I do a Google alerts for Boogaloo Boys and all sorts of stuff because I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I have family in the South, and I worry about that. And I think we're just not paying attention to what they're saying. And they're saying we're gonna like blow stuff up, kill people, do whatever if
Yeah.
Trump is not president. They're like, and they actually mean that because they've been testing the waters for the past few years to see how far they can go.
Yeah. And it's so true. And then with all the protesting and the counter protesting and stuff, absolutely. And I was thinking that too. I was thinking it's only a matter of time, before they make their move. And I think some people are not like, they just laugh when I say that. Actually, they actually laugh when I say a civil war. What are you talking about? I'm like, dude, like, you need to wake up. History history can repeat itself, so you got to be really careful about that. And I said, you just need to be paying attention to what's happening, and I mean, Trump has said some crazy stuff, about the voting thing, and then like him just saying, oh, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. Stuff like that, get his base acting crazy, and one of the things that I was reading an article, and the reporter said he's interested in getting his base radical. He's not interested in getting more voters. Now he's just ready for his base to get radical. And that's a scary thought. So anyways, Kristin, do you have any thoughts to that?
I definitely agree that it's possible. I honestly, this year, 2020, okay, I would take nothing off the table at this point. Nothing off the table. Because, 2020, okay. But I think there's a lot of possibility for those who are just adamantly tied to white supremacy and to capitalism. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I know people are scared of Trump, and I know he is a scary person, but frankly, I think he's like the last great cry of like white supremacists, male, Eurocentric, male, white, capitalist folk. I think he's like their last like shot at something, and they're just like, let's throw spaghetti at the wall and have this crazy person because we're dying out. And they are dying out. They are outnumbered. They are outnumbered and they are dying out. And so I actually could see the possibility of a civil war because I could see that faction getting to a place of such desperation that they will start to take up arms. I do not see it as coming from us, like despite all the media hype and, oh, the protesters, they're rioters or whatever. I am not sold as someone who is in the streets protesting, seeing the same 5 people that y'all are calling rioters. And it's the same 5 every time. Like, I'm not convinced that is any way coming from our end, but I do think it could be coming from the radical right.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to echo Kristin, I mean, I'm in the streets like all the time, marching, protesting, rallies, events. Like, there's literally been, I've never seen any type of looting, any type of rioting. The only crazy that I've seen is from the police. Like, literally, like, they're the ones either instigating crazy stuff or there was a time where they ran into the crowd, they grabbed somebody, then they let them go. And it was just like, yo, what are you doing? Are you like trying to like get us scared? I was like, bye. Well, like we just started marching. I'm like, what are you doing? Like they're literally doing that, to start stuff. It's the police, period. Like, because every time we start a protest, they're like, this is a peaceful protest. Everybody repeat, this is a peaceful protest. And I know the people that organize it, and the people that go, that I see all the time. So like I can definitely concur that it's like completely peaceful, and it's the police they're wilding out.
No,
They're
I don't
wilding
think
out.
I don't think it's us. I think
Yeah.
it will be, we have a vote out in November, and we have, hopefully, knock on wood, a big turnover in the Senate, and then there
Yeah.
is some,
That would be great.
some crazy backlash, because the world is actually starting to make a little bit more sense again, and then that faction will be very upset. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Betty, what's going on here?
Can you hear us now? Oh, we can't. Oh, you're on mute.
So we can't hear you.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm trying to turn on the video. They had no clothes on, so that's I need to put a picture up there.
Okay.
It's Friday. Okay, I love it. You know what? Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy.
It's all good. It's all good. You can just leave it off, and you can chit chat that way if you don't feel comfortable. It's totally fine.
Yeah, but I don't know how to put a picture. I wanted to put my dog picture up there, but I don't know how to do it.
Oh, we can show you after. I'm just gonna ask like one more question, and then I can
Oh, yeah.
ask you how to do it. All right. All right. This is our last, or maybe the second to last question of the night. What can be done to change the high-risk status for Black women having in childbirth or going to give birth? How can we change that high-risk status? One of the things that a doctor was talking about was making sure that all the medical students know about, Black people, Black women, were, that whole stereotype of, oh, we can take pain and this craziness that came from slavery, that came from doctors, where they didn't want to feel bad or didn't want to feel guilty for experimenting on Black women or Black children or Black men. And that was their way of cop out, to be like, oh, well, they can take the pain because they don't feel it as much. So that was one doctor's way of trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. But what can we do as a society or a community, or maybe, in your seat, Kristin, prayerfully next year, how can this be rectified?
Yeah, I can raise my hand. Wait a minute.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to tell you, they had to educate the people who doesn't, understand Black people or other people, that we all human.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, like, they used to experiment on Black people as taquitos or something like this. Experiment was terrible. But I was gonna tell you that they had to educate and just educate people that we feel the same thing. Everybody feel pain, cats, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the medical, I guess, the medical, I don't know. They say the more money you make, the better medical coverage you have. The more money you have, the more better coverage you can get.
Yeah.
I think I think to go off of that, I think that we have to address the capitalism that is in healthcare, right? I think that's at the root of this, because we see Black women as Black women. If we're Black and both Black and female, we are getting that sort of double-edged card in this system, and it's by design. It's by design because of how capitalism is set up to privilege white males. And our medical system, because it's not about healthcare for all, and it's not a universal healthcare system, because of that, we see all of the ills of capitalism fall into the healthcare space as well. one of the things that I think I could do, or anyone in sort of political positions, political power positions could do, is elevate the voices of Black women who are in the healthcare space. Um, they may be few and far between, but they do exist. My mother is actually one of them. She is a emergency doctor, emergency room physician at a hospital here in Harlem, and she specializes in studying healthcare disparities. So, and you know, and she'll be the first to tell you that there's not many of them. Like, that's true. There's not many, but
Yeah.
we do have Black women who are also involved in healthcare, and we should listen to them. We should listen to the people who have the lived experience and the medical expertise,
Yeah.
and start listening to how we set up a system in a different way that centers those voices. And all of the people, myself included, all of us who are in any way in a position of power or potentially in a position of political power, we need to first and foremost be centering the voices of those most in need and most oppressed. That has to be the way we set up things. It has to be the way we go about making policy decisions. It has to be, you know, in all spheres, not just healthcare, but in all the spaces. Otherwise, we're never going to address the disparities. Like, we're never going to address them. They're not going to disappear, and we cannot just imagine them away, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing is taking everyone who's been left out of the conversation and in the healthcare space that has definitely been Black women and pulling them into the conversation.
Absolutely. That's a good idea. Yeah.
I love that. I think Kristin was positioning it as a multi-pronged effort, because it has to be. And I'm going to do a shameless plug, because I have an initiative called Black Women Be Whole. It's a advocacy for mental health and self-care. You can find us on Instagram. But we did an intimate conversation series in which we talked about this, because my co-creator, business partner, has been going through IVF and a bunch of stuff. And we interviewed someone who really talked about advocacy. And I think part of the issue is when we're in those rooms, we don't know how to advocate for ourselves. We bow to authority, that whole thing of like, not understanding what's happening and not forcing people to explain to us in a way that we need to be in partnership for taking care of informed choice, informed decision making, options available to us with our healthcare, because I can have a different healthcare need than you can. Our insurance will give us what we need, and it may not be what we actually need to like freaking save our lives, which is ridiculous to me. Like, can I live? I would like to be alive and like relatively healthy.
Yeah.
And so I think really talking about how do we empower and equip people when they're in those spaces, in those rooms with those doctors who have anti-Black views, who have those like stereotypical views about Black people, right? And say, no, I pay you, like my insurance, whatever's paying you, and so you have to give me the care that I demand. Like the subpar care that you're trying to give me is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And so I think that check it out. She was really good. She was very like informative. She's been in that system, the healthcare system, for about 20 years. And so I think for her, it was an eye-opening experience for me. And it also like tapped into, like, I had to go with my godmother. She had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And the doctor that she originally had, their office called her and they told her, oh, you have stage 4 cancer. You have to like go see someone else. And I was like, no one should have told you that over the phone. One, two, that is subpar care. So I was so outraged. She invited me to go with her to her appointment, and I made the space for that, because you're not going to treat my godmother like that. And like, I'm gonna tear up your whole room if you even try to. Like, I love this woman. So went with her, and I literally had to like, and I asked questions that she didn't think to ask. And so my point is, if you can go with someone, go with them, because she's like 60 something. Like, her preference for like the healthcare industry is not rooted in like my generation. Like, oh hell no, So I think you got to be there to support the other generations or the people who don't really have their voices. And I'll leave it at that.
That is so true. Yeah. I'm the same. I'm like, I advocate big time real quick. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key. You just have to advocate for yourself and your family and your friends. Like if they're not, hey, the doctor said this, like, no, that's not acceptable, you know. And I like what you did there, Kimberly. You went with, and you're like, absolutely not, right? And I feel that way too. Recently, like a few years ago, I had seen a doctor, and I didn't like the way she treated me. I felt like she treated me like I was incompetent. And going forward after that, I was like, I'm not putting up with anybody that treats me that way. That's not okay. And I think the reason why I put up with it was because, oh, well, she's a doctor. You kind of like, in my mind, I gave like, you know, a free pass because they're a doctor. I'm not like that anymore. So I've started stuff in the front, not started stuff, but I've been very like stern and vocal with the receptionist. So they're very, they know me. So they know I don't play, you know? So anyways.
I think that's so real. And you know, something that both of you brought up, I do want to just highlight is that the L in my Living Longer, the L in my Harlem platform stands for Living Longer. And it is a focus on healthcare in the district and senior care. And within that, one of the things I've been advocating for is more funding to the local senior centers, specifically so seniors can have a advocate to help them navigate the system. And I think that speaks to what we're saying about advocacy and just having that extra hand, because I remember when my great aunt was sick and we were navigating the healthcare system. And, you know, my great aunt was a smart Black woman. I'm a smart Black woman. My mom is a smart Black woman and a doctor. And the three of us together had challenges navigating her care. So I don't know how families who don't have a doctor in there do it. And I don't know how people who, you know, for whatever series of circumstances, don't have that family or don't have that support or don't have that extra advocate do it. So I really think it's on us. It's part of our collective responsibility to make sure we have advocates for every senior, that every senior, everyone dealing with a health crisis or end of life care, just general stuff, has someone who can help them navigate, you know.
And I just want to say, I love that that's part of your platform, because older seniors in a particular generation just gets forgotten about. But in our culture, in our communities, like the older, the aunties, the village mothers, like we care about them. And sometimes they don't quite know once they get to a particular stage of life what to do. And so sometimes we got to pick up that mantle, and I'm totally on board with that. So thank you so much for having that be part of your platform, because my mother and my godmother are awesome, and I want them here as long as they can be here, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So that I have another question, but I want to respect everyone's time. This question is going to take a while to answer, and I want to respect everyone's time because we only have like 4 minutes left. But I thank all of you for joining the talk. Stay tuned next month. I'll have that question maybe be the first question instead of the last one because it's juicy. So
You're gonna leave us in suspense.
Yeah, I may not be able to make the next one.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. And again, I'm Kim. I'm your host, and I can't wait to see you all next month. And Kristin, do you have any last thoughts before we close out?
Just thank you, Kim, for hosting this. Thank you for the conversation. I always appreciate these talks. You know, I always feel like I get something from it. It always sharpens the saw a little bit on my own thinking and my own platform points. I get political ideas. And then for anyone watching or listening, you know, please tune in. We're doing this once a month. And we will try to get some more promo out for the next one. But it's just, you know, a group of politically engaged women in the struggle here, like
Yeah,
women doing our stuff. So
absolutely.
And had
I
I
had
known
to
this
put
was live, I wouldn't have drank as much wine. I apologize.
No, it's all good. It's a
My
safe
first
space.
time. I'll be better next time.
Nah, it's all good.
wanted
It's
to
all
ask you, can
good.
somebody show me how to mute this? I mean, how to put my picture up there?